The destruction of the smaller, weaker banking competitors provided two benefits. One is the obvious. Fewer independent banks meant fewer but larger slices of the pie. Secondly, a small number of big banks are much easier to regulate or control than are larger numbers of independents. The engineered crises, therefore, provided a payday on several fronts. And after every one of these crises, there were fewer competitors and more brought out of the survivors under the control of the Federal Reserve. The bankers who engineered the crises argued that a central banking scheme would eliminate financial panics. They reasoned that all that was needed was the opportunity for the bankers to lend more money than they actually had, at interest. Creating money in this way would enable industry to buy now and pay later when they realized their profits. Of course, for the scheme to work, there would have to be a centralized control of the banking system, which is exactly what they wanted. Paul Warburg was a German immigrant from Hamburg, Germany. He was the son of an enormously wealthy banking family. Early on, he was recognized as an economic prodigy. At only 18, he was employed by the London headquarters of the Rothschild banking empire. In 1895, Warburg married Nina Loeb, another offspring of a Rothschild-backed banking dynasty. In 1901, the couple moved to New York. He was immediately offered a partnership in his father-in-law's firm of Kuhn and Loeb, one of the Wall Street's most prestigious firms. Soon after entering the world of American-style banking, Warburg began to set in motion a plan for a central bank. Some conspiracy theorists claim Warburg was given marching orders to establish a central bank in the United States while he was still apprenticing in the Rothschild Group in London. There's no direct evidence to establish that as a fact, but it is plausible, especially in the light of the fact that the Rothschild Group had been attempting to establish a central bank system in the United States since the American Revolution. In 1910, Paul Warburg began working with Senator Aldrich on the Federal Reserve Act. It was yet another effort to create a central bank of issue in the United States. Even the name is ingeniously deceptive because the organization is not under the control of our federal government, and its reserves are not secured by anything of intrinsic value, just credits backed by fiat paper money from our Treasury. The act was put before the House of Representatives on December 23rd, 1913, when most of the members of the Congress were home for Christmas. It passed without a legal voting quorum present. It was signed into law in their absence by President Woodrow Wilson. The act placed the constitutional power of Congress to regulate the U.S. economy into the hands of mostly foreign private bankers. After the vote, Congressman Charles Lindbergh told Congress, "This act establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. When the president signs this act, the invisible government by the money power, proven to exist by the money trust investigation, will be legalized. The new law will create inflation whenever the trust want inflation." It's not surprising that the first governor of the Fed was Paul Warburg, who was by then a naturalized U.S. citizen. Here's one of the most amazing facts of this infamous period of American history. During World War I, at the very time that Paul Warburg headed the U.S. Federal Reserve, his brother Max consulted the German Secret Service, and Sir William Weissman, a partner in the Wall Street banking firm of Warburg, Kuhn, and Loeb, was the head of the British intelligence. So members of the Warburg family ably played both sides of the street. Today, the Council on Foreign Relations, born in America, financed by Americans, comprised of the best and brightest America has to offer, seeks to destroy America and sell it into slavery under the domination of a coming one world government. You talk about playing both sides of the street. The old game continues, but now the stakes bear catastrophic and eternal consequences. And soon, the last hand will be dealt. You know, the God of the Bible is the only one who has a really realistic view of man's nature. There have been those who are utopian thinkers in all kinds of political systems down through history. But God showed his estimate of what kind of government he wants when all the way back in Genesis chapter 11, the first world dictator who brought the whole world under his government was under a man named Nimrod. This was rejected by God, and to make man spread into national entities, he confused the languages. Now, that's not just a fairy tale. God did that because he knows that in order for one man and his sin nature to well up and be corrupted by power, because we know that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, in order to keep that from happening, he wanted to split up the world governments into national entities so all of them couldn't be taken over at one time by one leader. But man's been trying to overcome that ever since. And now we have the idea that an elite group of men can overcome all the problems we face and can somehow keep us at peace, be able to deal with all of the big problems like climate change, which I don't believe is being caused by man. Scientific evidence shows it's being caused by solar activity. But any cause big enough can be used by this group, they feel. And I just believe that none of these things are going to work because the nature of man is corrupted from birth. God says there's not a good man on earth who always does good and does not sin. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 20. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And that's why the most important message I can close with is, how are you going to be made fitting to come into the presence of holy God? Well, God made it possible because he stepped out of eternity into time in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, and died in your place to purchase your pardon. And if you will just admit that you're not good enough for God to accept, receive that gift of pardon, you'll change your eternal destiny. There's only one that's ever going to bring peace to this earth, and that's when Jesus Christ comes back and puts it under new order. God bless you. And God willing, I'll see you next week.